The Denver Broncos have put the final touches on their preparation ahead of Thursday night's short showdown against the Kansas City Chiefs. What do we learn from Broncos practice on Tuesday that sets the table for Thursday's primetime action? Well, you're going to get all that in today's episode of Good Morning Broncos. Good morning, Broncos Country. Welcome into another episode of GMB, your daily bite-sized Broncos conversation that you can enjoy with your cup of coffee every single morning here on Mile High Sports YouTube page, 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time to be exact. On weekdays here, the Broncos gearing up for their Thursday night showdown against the Kansas City Chiefs. And a lot of the major sports books out there have the Broncos going into this game as 10.5-point road underdogs here. And so much contingent upon Denver's bottom-ranked defense and points allowed, yards allowed on the ground, rushing yards allowed per game. Denver's going to be challenged a little bit here in Thursday's game. But overall, the Broncos did hold a walkthrough practice on Tuesday here. And I feel like we got to talk about something here, folks, because I see a lot of comments sometimes, and I get some responses in the comments here on YouTube, get them on social media. A lot of conversation stems, people are mad that the Broncos don't tackle during practice. Well, folks, it's the regular season. You're not going to tackle your guys at practice. You're not going to smack your guys in practice. That defeats the purpose of playing the game. Now, obviously, you get a lot more contact initiation going on through training camp because there's an acclimation period of not wearing pads for so long. You have to get there because every single week you're going to be in pads. You're going to be hitting. So no NFL team does that. I just felt like I had to get that out there because I've seen some comments saying, well, the Broncos can't tackle because they don't hit each other in practice. Well, no team in the NFL in the regular season is going to do that. But here's the deal also. The Broncos are in a very, very unique situation here, as is every team that plays on Thursday night football, unless the NFL one day decides to change things. You play a game on Sunday, and look, Denver's game was a physical, grind-them-out game there. Look, the Broncos defense, they had their moments. Obviously, they've given up some big plays, but, man, it's physical for the offense and the defense and everybody on special teams to be able to get where they need to be to turn it around from a Sunday game where you play. You have to come in on Monday, go through film and meetings, and then try to go through days of treatment. Tuesday, you have a walkthrough and treatment. Wednesday, you have a walkthrough practice and more treatment, and then you're just hoping by the time Thursday night comes around that you're able to go without soreness or limitations from the last game that you just played a few days prior. That is the challenge here. And going around and talking to Broncos players in the locker room, they're really just trying to get their bodies right. On top of that, they have to get not only just their bodies right, but their minds right to go out there and play another game. And so anytime you have that short turnaround the way that you have, you don't get as much time to game plan and go through the preparation phase that you normally do in a week-to-week situation here. And so I think that's going to be where the challenge lies here. I mean, obviously, here's the thing. Denver starting off the season 1-4. It's not what Sean Payton expected. That's not what anybody watching the show has expected from this team. And if you're saying that was the case, you knew that they were going to be in this position all along, you're lying to yourself because of the moves that Denver has made this offseason. Because, okay, now they're getting a competent coach in Sean Payton. Those were the narratives that we've discussed here on the show. They're 1-4. And look, when you look at it, they could easily be 4-1, right? But the NFL is a woulda, coulda, shoulda lead. But woulda, coulda, shoulda is not going to change the reality where Denver's sitting right now. And I think Russell Wilson made a great point of acknowledging that in his post-game press conference. There's been some things that the Broncos have done well on the offensive side of the ball, especially in special teams. Those have been really, there are two areas of this team that have been bright spots through the first 5 weeks of play here. Now you're going into week 6. And right now the storyline has been the Denver Broncos struggles to stop opposing offenses. And look, after holding Josh Jacobs to 48 yards on 19 carries in week 1, Denver just kind of experienced a little bit of a free fall on the defensive side against the run. And it kind of started a little bit in that second quarter, second half, third quarter there against the Washington Commanders with Antonio Gibson and obviously Brian Robinson. They were able to get some big runs going on there. Obviously, the chunk plays in the screen game hurt the Broncos there. But then you come on in week 3, you surrender 350 yards on the ground to the Miami Dolphins. Week 2, 171 to the Chicago Bears. And then this past week, over 200-plus rush yards to the New York Jets. And that's where the concerning trend is. And Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph met with the media as well on Tuesday and said that this season has not been fun. And I think Broncos fans are in agreement. It has not been a fun season for them in terms of the optics and how they're trying to view things and where they had the expectations from them in training camp coming into the season. They haven't matched the standard that they've set for themselves. And that's frustrating too. And look, as we've acknowledged here on the show, Vance Joseph is the defensive coordinator. It's not entirely on him, right? Players have to go execute. And I think that in the locker room, when you talk to guys, they even acknowledge, we got to tackle better. We got to be in better position. Sean Payton talked about the importance of leveraging technique and getting back to that, because sometimes technique is getting thrown out the window here. And unfortunately, Denver's in a position where they're dealing with some injuries as well. So let's open up our injury report here on today's episode of Good Morning Broncos. Once again, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that's tuning in here on Mile High Sports YouTube page. We just surpassed 3.2 thousand subscribers. Hit that subscribe button if you love all Colorado sports. You're a Colorado sports fan. We have you covered here with all the pro sports. You have CU Buffs coverage as well that you're going to get from time to time on this YouTube channel as well. But going through our injury report here for the Broncos on Tuesday. Now, obviously, a lot of the guys that were on the injury report last week, they're on it again this week, and that's just injury management, making sure that these guys can eventually get off of the report and become full statuses to where their names aren't on there. So let's take a look at players who were limited in Tuesday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center. Safety Justin Simmons, as we know, have been dealing with that hip and that groin injury. He was limited on Tuesday's practice. We'll see where he's at on Wednesday. Obviously, he played last week, and you can definitely tell it was a big boost getting him back on the back end of that secondary for the Broncos. Very, very important player for what they want to do. Defensive tackle Mike Purcell, rib injury suffered against the Miami Dolphins. He was questionable going into Sunday's game against the New York Jets. He played, and he had to step up and play a little bit more after the injury to DJ Jones, which we'll dive into here in just a little bit, but he was a limited participant in Tuesday's practice. Linebacker and special teams ace Justin Sternad popped up with a back injury, was limited during Tuesday's practice. Outside linebacker Baron Browning, who was activated off the team's physically unable to perform list last week, got his first padded practice in last week as well, and is continuing to ramp things up after having that knee surgery in the offseason. He was a limited participant. And look, I think that there could be some grounds. Maybe we'll see him for Green Bay. Maybe we'll see him for that second Kansas City Chiefs game that is coming up, because it is on the radar here for Denver in terms of that 21-day window that Baron Browning does have. Center Lloyd Cushenberry dealt with the quad injury all of last week, was a limited participant then. He was a limited participant in Tuesday's game. He did play in Sunday's game, Tuesday's practice, I might add. Sunday's game, he did perform on Thursday. So more than likely, you're going to wait to see what the status is here this afternoon as the team will release their final injury report, and we'll get you updated on tomorrow's episode of Good Morning Broncos. Then here's the big news here, right? The Broncos could be getting some reinforcements back with tight end Greg Dulcich, who suffered a hamstring injury in week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders. He was placed on short-term injured reserve. He was activated and designated to return from injured reserve on Tuesday afternoon, and he was no longer on the side field. He was on the team field, participating in team stretch, participating in individual period, and we'll see where he's at. Broncos head coach Sean Payton met with us after practice and had talked about where he's at. He's made good progress. They want to see how he's moving in terms of explosive plays, being able to run violently without having any setbacks. He's been under the watchful eye of VP player performance, Bo Lowry, and he's making good progress, as Sean Payton said. Not sure if he's going to play on Thursday night, but did say that he's close. So I think that is something, if you're a Broncos fan, to keep an eye on here. I think reintroducing Greg Dulcich into this offense, specifically at the tight end position, I think will help in terms of where Denver's at and maybe sustainability, right? Because no offense to Adam Troutman, Adam Troutman's not as explosive as a guy like Greg Dulcich. Neither is Nate Adkins or Chris Manhurst. Those guys don't possess the explosive athletic ability necessarily that Dulcich does in comparison to the positions that they play. So that could allow the Broncos to do some different things offensively that maybe they haven't been able to do with him being out. I think you could stretch across the middle of the field. You can stretch vertically a little bit more with a guy like Dulcich. And I think that Denver's going to look to take advantage of that when he does fully embrace returning into the lineup. So good news. Help is on the way on the offensive side of the ball here for Greg Dulcich. And Javonte Williams could be on track to play here on Thursday. Now, he was a full participant in Friday's practice last week, did a pregame workout that I watched him under the watchful eye of a Broncos strength and conditioning staff member pregame. And the Broncos decided to hold him out just because of the fact that, hey, look, you're playing a Sunday game. You're already coming off of an injury. Now you got to go play a Thursday game. More than likely, Javonte Williams, who's been dealing with the quad injury, he'll be ready to go more than likely on Thursday night football. So something to keep an eye on here. And then after that game, Denver's got 10 days off until their next game. So a lot of time to maybe rest, recover, and get some guys back. Players who did not participate in Tuesday's practice here for the Broncos include outside linebacker Frank Clark. He was excused with an illness, according to Broncos head coach Sean Payton. And then defensive tackle DJ Jones, as we had talked about, who suffered a knee injury in the second quarter of the Broncos' loss to the New York Jets on Sunday. He was on the side field working with the trainer, did not participate. We'll see what his status may be going into Thursday's game. But if he didn't participate on Tuesday and he doesn't do much here today when the team goes through their final walkthrough, where they're going to do some red zone, they're going to do some goal line, third down situation, 2-minute stuff, according to Sean Payton. If he's unable to go during that portion here, more than likely, I don't think we're going to see him play on Thursday night, which means Mike Purcell, if he's able to go, if he didn't suffer any setback with his ribs there, he would more than likely get the start. And then I think you might see a combination of, guys like Elijah Garcia. You could potentially see a practice squad to game day elevation for nose tackle Tyler Lancaster, who signed with the team in the offseason, played quite a bit of a role with them in the preseason. He's on their practice squad right now. I think these are things we all have to keep our eye on here for Denver going forward. But ultimately, look, here's the deal. Denver's offense, they'll have to find a way to play a little bit better than they did against the Jets. I don't feel like outside of that first half, Denver didn't play that well offensively in the second half, and the New York Jets coverage scheme, they took some things away here, but you're going to see a very aggressive Steve Spagnuolo who loves to send different disguise looks. You'll see a lot of cover 2, you see a lot of cover 4, but then you're going to see a lot of corner blitzes. You're going to see a lot of guys coming off the edge on the inside, like they'll send pressure, and this is where Denver has to do a better job of accounting for that and protection, as Russell Wilson got sacked several times in that second half there. And I'll be very curious to see how Denver, if they win the coin toss, like obviously they're going to get to choose heads or tails because they're the visiting team on Thursday night. But Denver being undefeated in coin toss so far, dating back to the last game of the regular season last year so far, we'd say 6-0 dating back to week 18. They've chosen to defer every single time. It has not resulted in a score in the second half. It's either resulted in a punt or a turnover in 6 straight games. So if Denver wins the coin toss, will they get it? If Kansas City wins, they'll defer, and Denver will be able to open up on Thursday night with the ball for the first time to start a game so far this season. And so far, in 4 out of the 5 games Denver has played, on their opening drive, they've scored a touchdown. So that's a promising sign. They're very good on script. But then as the games progress, we've seen them struggle a little bit. And look, it's hard too when your defense is giving up chunk yardage, but these guys are trying to find a way to buck the trend and try to fix that issue that's been impacting them so far throughout this season. But as we've talked about, everything is fluid. Now, a lot of the conversations as well, we've seen it here on YouTube. We've seen it on social media. We've gotten in our Broncos mailbag over there at Mile High Sports. A lot of fans have asked about a potential rebuild and tearing it down and the NFL trade deadline, which is coming up on October 31st. Sean Payton gave a very, very interesting answer, which, part of me, I also believe him when he says this here. But he said, regarding the trade deadline, him and George Payton, they talk every day, 3 or 4 times a day. He says, we're not looking to do business with any of our players. That doesn't prevent teams from calling at times. He says, you pick up the phone, but that's kind of where it's at. We got a good handle on this current roster and our vision for the roster a year from now. That's part of improving and getting better. Until you just said it, I wouldn't have known it was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks seems like an eternity right now. And in the NFL world, 3 weeks is an eternity. And the Broncos' schedule doesn't get any easier here going forward. Thursday night against the Chiefs. You have a Sunday game, not this week, but the following week against the Green Bay Packers, and another Sunday game against the Kansas City Chiefs, who will be visiting. Then you have the bye. Then you have a Monday night football game against the Buffalo Bills, if I'm not mistaken. Then you have a Sunday night game against the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see. That might be flexed out here going forward because of where both teams are currently sitting with a 1-4 record here overall. So everything's fluid right now in the NFL. And look, obviously there's a lot of things going on with other teams right now. We've seen guys like Van Jefferson dealt. Chase Claypool's been dealt. Teams are more than likely, because they did it in the offseason, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call and they're going to ask about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I'm sure you're going to get phone calls about Patrick Surtain, but I don't believe that Denver's looking to trade away key players like Patrick Surtain or Justin Simmons that, have been floated out there by fans. A lot of fans want to get rid of all these players so they can get capital. And look, while anything is possible, things change here in the NFL. Everything becomes a little bit more fluid as each day progresses. There's new challenges that present itself. You always have to factor in. You don't want to make decisions too far ahead of schedule because you run into issues. Like if Denver would have traded Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, they wouldn't have had a solution or an answer to when they lost Tim Patrick in training camp to a torn Achilles. And so you have to be very smart and strategic. And look, unfortunately, I get it. Fans are very passionate. But so many fans operate with Madden brain. And Madden brain is one of the worst things that you can have because a lot of the moves that fans want to make, they just simply don't make sense for the team, right? And ultimately, if you're going to trade away players, what you get back in return has to make sense and it has to give you maybe something that fits into your vision, as we've heard Sean Payton discuss so many times here. But we'll see where things are at here. Obviously, a short turnaround. One more practice here today for the Broncos. They walk through, and then tonight they'll get on the plane. They'll go to Kansas City, and then tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football, they'll be taking on the AFC West juggernauts, the Kansas City Chiefs, who sit at a 4-1 record, while Denver, they sit at a 1-4 record as it stands right now. We'll have you covered leading up through kickoff. We'll also have you covered the next day on Friday's episode of GMB, recapping Thursday Night Football, talking about what went on. You're going to get all of that this week here on Mile High Sports YouTube page. Just another reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button here to the channel so you never miss out on what's going on with Colorado sports, every team, every day. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. I'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Good Morning Broncos.